Well, to discuss what the spill and Barack Obama's tough new stance all mean for the oil industry and its investors, I'm joined by Christopher Wheaton, manager of the Allianz RCM Energy Fund. Christopher, hi. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
The bad news flow for BP just turning slightly, do you feel?
It feels for the first time that they have got literally on top of the problem, and I think it's extremely encouraging what they've achieved. Given the depth of water, almost a mile below the surface, this well might as well be on the other side of the moon, and what they've achieved I think is a pretty impressive technological achievement in the circumstances. I know it's been disappointing for news flow, and I think some of that's reflected in the political news we've seen today, but I think they've done a pretty good job so far of getting on top of what's really is an unprecedented problem.
Obama's been criticised for allowing BP to sort of get on with it, but maybe he should have done something first. BP have been criticised for being too... I mean, they're an easy target, aren't they? How do you think Tony Hayward has dealt with this very difficult task?
Well, there's certainly no votes in being nice to big oil, that's pretty certain. I think Tony Hayward's very much led from the front, and I think that's been an extremely good thing to do. He's obviously been very visible and extremely generous with his time in saying, look, this is a real issue for BP, it's a real issue for the industry as well. I think where the industry now has to go is make sure that the lessons get learned from this experience. We've got to remember that 11 people died. At the heart of this, there is a very personal tragedy for a number of families. But beyond that, we've also got to make sure that whatever response the industry sees from government is measured, is rational, and it doesn't throw the baby out with the bathwater, if you like. It doesn't overreact and therefore start to impair the economics of Gulf of Mexico drilling.
I mean, is it a game changer for the industry, or do you think that isn't the case?
It's certainly a game changer for the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah.
I think this really will bring the levels of inspection, certainly the levels of cost, much closer to those, say, in the North Sea or in Norway or offshore Brazil, which already have tighter or more exacting standards for offshore drilling. I certainly would expect those conditions to be implemented in the next 6 months, and I think this moratorium for 6 months is about buying time, not just for the regulators but for the industry as well, to make the changes that need to happen before drilling can recommence.
Just got some live pictures, Christopher, of, as you were saying, a mile below the surface. That's what's happening now. It's tough, isn't it, because oil consumption, it's a pretty big necessity, isn't it? So as new frontiers are broken by the oil industry, one always has to keep in mind that it's demand which is pushing them to search, to defeat these new frontiers.
I completely agree. I mean, 85 million barrels a day of oil demand in the world is a pretty big necessity to drive the invention or the innovation that means that nowadays you're drilling a mile below the sea surface for oil, whereas 10 years ago, 500 meters was the new frontier. And that's a huge change. There's literally an order of magnitude change in 10 years in the depth of water drilling. So that 85 million barrels a day, that's a pretty big incentive.
I know you hold BP down 20% since April the 20th. I mean, some have said as a long-term play with the dividend yield, I mean, this is a buy, is it?
Well, I think BP is poster child for a whole number of concerns about the big oil business model as a concept. Is it out of time because the national oil companies are taking much more ownership of resources, and with the cost inflation and the increasing technological innovation that's required, just as you referred to tap oil in deeper water, tighter rock, harsher environments, maybe big oil isn't as able to do that as in the past. I would say yes, all those things are true, but at the moment a lot of the big oil business model seems priced to fail, and I don't think that's the case. Big oil's been around for 100 years. At 85 million barrels a day, it'll have to be around for many years more.
Christopher Wheaton, thanks very much for joining us today.